So there were some restrictions, but the main thing for me is I want to be careful in how I talk about Oracle because we're an Oracle partner today too of my new business. But some of the innovation levels that were going on that Oracle was kind of doing in the 2016 timeframe was not going fast enough. And so when we started this in 2018, our strategy was to work with kind of all the, I'll call it the next generation cloud players. So we partnered with firms like Anaplan, Salesforce, DocuSign. That was kind of the original group of cloud players that we started working with, really because their innovation level we felt was superior. And I think the market over the last 5 years, that has played out, that it was just going faster and better than what the big guys, what Oracle and SAP were really up to. So by partnering with these next gen tools, I think we've been able to grow a lot faster than if we probably would have gone back to some of the more traditional stuff. Gary, on that note, I like what you had said earlier about your customers being your friends in the dialogue that you have with them, because our company motto is all business is personal. And this I attribute to my dad having small town values where, he would say the best business deal is done over a handshake, not a legal contract, dealt with someone because when you deliver a successful project, you're impacting not only the company they work for, but you're impacting that person's life probably too. Successful project, maybe you get a special bonus, a raise, promotion, who knows, and just realizing how important it is to develop those relationships because in our world, especially dealing with technology, it doesn't always go as planned. When you've developed that relationship, it's so critical to success. In the first business, we made a couple mistakes that were almost put us out of business. The big one was we tried to expand into Asia, and this would have been in 2008, 2009 range when China really started to get kind of rolling. Although that was kind of the popular thing to do. If I listen to what I've said, you can probably tell now I go against that grain a little bit. Well, one of the reasons why I go against that grain is because we tried that whole China-Asia thing, and it was a complete disaster. I'll spare you all the details as far as like what we did and how it got messed up, but we lost a bunch of money not understanding how hard it is to do business outside of the US. I think sometimes Americans take for granted how easy it is to do business, like relatively speaking, to some of these other places. And we couldn't get ourselves paid. We had no recourse. It was just a complete disaster. And so in this company, although we have expanded globally, we've been much more measured as far as how we've done it. We've been careful to work in countries that we understand really well, that we have the right leaders in place. But these are all learnings from, major mistakes in the first company. So in the time that I wasn't working and kind of trying to figure out what was next, I went on a volunteer trip with my mom. So my mom was a retired social worker, and we went on a trip in Nicaragua. It was a group of women that ran a community center. Nicaragua is so poor that public school is only half day long, and so the other half of the day, these kids would go to these community centers, to get some education, but really more to keep them out of trouble and give them a meal. We volunteered, and just what these ladies were doing with such little money was eye-opening. But the real kicker for me, Gary, was we went to one of the kids' homes. It's one of these dirt floor kind of tin shack, and literally as far as the eye could see, that's all that it was in the shanty town. And I just walked away from it. I said to my mom, I need to do something about this. And we talked about it, and she said, well, you're actually good at business. If you create a business, you can create jobs, where you add to the tax base. If you're doing well, you can be philanthropic if that's, what you choose. But, more or less to be a productive member of society, go create some jobs. And that was really the start of Spaulding Ridge. Interestingly, the guy that led the trip is now one of my VPs in my people organization. So I had to bring him over to help me do this too. But the trip and just kind of seeing that poverty, really wanted me to go create another business.
I tell the story. I worked at a young age, from 10 years old on, doing my own stuff, and my dad had me working as well. But either way, I love making my own money, my own way. But some of the best lessons you learn in those low-paying minimum wage jobs. And I worked in a factory for a couple of winters with a good friend of mine that was a supervisor of the factory. And the minimum wage at the time was $4.25 an hour. And this is when I was 18, 19 years old in the wintertime, because my business had started already by this point, and I didn't want to dip into my savings. And I couldn't get unemployment. It was a blessing, actually. I could not get unemployment because I was self-employed. And I didn't realize that until I went to apply. But either way, that was a blessing, because the lessons I learned, instead of getting an unemployment check, I got a check that ended up to be maybe similar or less than an unemployment check, netting a little over $100 a week. But the lessons I learned in that factory about productivity, quality assurance were amazing. But the biggest lesson I learned was this great country, America, and the opportunities that lie ahead for me. Because I listened to people from all over the world that had these minimum wage jobs from Poland and Mexico and China, people from all over the world. My businesses early on, I didn't know what good culture looked like or bad culture. I didn't really have a clue. Almost didn't care. I just thought if I worked hard and did the right thing, good things would happen. And some of that's true, right? But as you're hiring and really promoting and growing that business, you don't have any values that your teammates could look at to live by, grow by, and lead by. You have all different types of people that have a different definition of the culture, right? And I had that for the first 15, 20 years of my business. I think 15 years in, we created values, but we didn't really live by them. They were up on the wall. And if you looked at our marketing piece, you can see those values. But if you looked at our company, we didn't really talk about them, and therefore didn't live by them as much as we should have. So eventually we redid our values, had some of the same ones, but eventually our culture changed as we really lived by the values we believed would build the right culture. But it was probably 20 years in before we really got that, and probably 30 years in before we did it really, really well. And for the last 10 years, I think we've accomplished what we want. But to start like you did, not very common. And boy, if I did it all over again, and right now when we start businesses, they all kind of have the same core values that we have within a group of companies. But if I started all over with a brand new company, didn't know markets I was serving, the customer that I was serving, whatever, or did know, I would do exactly what you're saying.